Hey guys, how are we doing? We're getting started with a new unit. We're going to be starting on Unit 7, which is going to be Chapter 8, Lesson 8.1, and we're going to be talking about fractions. So when we talk about fractions, we do have some new vocabulary that we have to learn. And our first piece of vocabulary is what a whole is. All right, and a whole, in the sense of, when we're talking about fractions, is all of the parts of one shape or group. So for example, think of a pizza being delivered to your house. All right, when you open up that box, you have one whole pizza. Okay, that's what a whole represents, the whole pizza or the whole shape or group. Equal parts would represent the slices. So most pizzas are cut into 8 slices, and they're generally all the same size. So we want to make sure that we have equal parts. Each of those 8 slices are broken up equally, are at exactly the same size. And that's going to go for any shape that we do. So for example, if we were to look at this square right now, right, we could see that it is one square, it's one shape, okay? But now if we draw a line through it, how many different parts do we see there? Right, we see 2, okay? We do have 2. And when we're talking about fractions, we are talking about new words. Those parts have names, and those parts are called halves. So here we happen to have 2 halves that create the one whole. And if we think about how many parts are in this square, right, we should be able to count out there's 3. We call those 3 thirds. There are 3 thirds that make up that whole. And if we keep on going, we make our shape a little differently, we cut it up a little differently, but still have an equal amount of space on each side. We see that in here, we count it out, we're going to end up having 4 equal parts. And we call those fourths. Okay, so we have 4 fourths that make the whole. And again, the question is going to stay the same. How many parts make up this whole shape? And when we count it out, hopefully you got 6. And that's going to have a name as well. All right, so each of these parts are going to be called sixths. All right, the whole shape has 6 sixths to break up to make that whole. And finally, if we look at this shape right over here, we're going to see that we actually have 8. Right, we have 8 equal parts here. All right, and those are called eighths. You'll notice for many of them, we're just adding a th at the end. All right, or in this case, an h. All right. So now looking through, right, what we have just talked about, we have 2 halves, 3 thirds, 4 fourths, 6 sixths, and 8 eighths. Okay. So remember, it doesn't matter the shape that you're talking about, as long as they're all broken up into equal shapes and they're taking up the same amount of space, you're talking about fractions right there. You've made fractions or you've recognized fractions, as long as they're equal. So let's do a little practice right now. Now, when you look at this first shape, we have an arrow, all right? And we drew a line right down it. So you should recognize right here, how many parts in this arrow are there? And what would they be called? Right? There are 2 equal parts, and they're called halves. If I look at my next shape, right, I see in this circle, how many parts are there? And then what would you call those parts? We have 4 equal parts, and they're called fourths. And then remember, we also want to make sure that we have equal. They have to be equal size, equal length, equal space. And when we look at certain shapes like this triangle right over here, you'll clearly see that these are not 2 equal sides. They're unequal, right? One's bigger than the other. When we move on to our diamond over here, you'll see it's cut right down the middle. And these are exactly the same size. You know what they'd be called? Those would be called halves. Very good. All right, and on this section over here, we'll see they're broken into 8 parts, and they all seem to be equal right there. We call those eighths. So for practice, the teachers have sent you a Google Doc that we're going to ask you to complete. Make sure that you make a copy of that doc and then share it with your teacher. The directions for that will also be on top of the actual doc when you receive it. All right, good luck. Fractions are awesome. This isn't that bad of a lesson, so really grasp this one, take it in, and if you pay attention to this really well, you'll find fractions are super easy.